okay, what about the LPL? Like, what is the difference? Because there you're working online and you're working from home, and you have a completely different array of talent, and it's all these Australian and like down under people. I don't know what you would call them, but but how is it working with them and then working in like they play league completely differently? Personally, my favorite way, like most entertaining way of playing. But how is like the difference there? Like,
I agree with you. And if I've always said this, if LPL had the same infrastructure LEC has in terms of how the talent is treated, how much the pay is, I would work LPL for the rest of my life. I
mm,
prefer watching LPL any day of the week to like LEC. And LEC is fun to watch. It's not to say it's bad. It's just to say that LPL is way more exciting. Even bad teams in LPL are fun looking at because they will never go down without a fight. I can watch Astralis, I can just watch them slowly but surely die out and nothing's happening in League, right? But even in LPL, it just comes through. So the League of Legends gameplay in itself is way better in LPL. The talent as well in LPL, they are crazy. Like the Australians and the Americans, while I said that the people need their personal space here in LEC, they don't do that in LPL. They're like they come in and there's energy on from the get-go. Even if we're casting at 5 in the morning, which is what we had to get up for to kind of do the tech checks and all that, the conversations are just coming through. Everyone's having a good time. Everyone's really just gelling really good together. And I think they have actually been the team that tried to set me up the most when I came in because at the LEC you are an individual and you're working for yourself. No one's going to help you. Well, of course, they're going to help you a little bit, but it's not their responsibility to make you good. You have to work on that yourself. But even in the LPL, like if I had any issues, if I didn't understand a team because I hadn't been casting them for too long, I would ask Lyric back then and he would come in. He'd fucking make a whole 4-page, 5-page document about a team and he'd be like, just mention these things, then it's going to sound really good. And he'd sit with me for an hour, even though he didn't have to make sure that what I put on the broadcast was really good. So I think for sure, like the passion is way more passionate at the LPL because they are not allowed to relax. They have to be on all the time. They like you don't the pay is not that high. If you're there because you watch the league and you love the league and you love everything you do about it. So it's not to say that people at LEC are not as passionate at all because they still are really passionate people as I explained earlier. But LPL people are just crazy. They're like
yeah.
they match the league. They're not your average person. They're absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, like, does some of this craziness and this hype, it does like affect you as well, right? In a positive way. It like,
100%.
yeah, okay, that's funny because like, you just see like so like like why do you think like the gameplay is so different from LEC and NA, like LCS than to like the LPL?
I think it's a playstyle where the LPL for the longest time ever obviously have had very good mechanics, but they also see the game in a different way where in the beginning everyone was really looking at Koreans and their way of playing the game, like we're talking back season
Yeah,
3, season 4, right? Which was very macro oriented, which was like we don't fight unless there's an objective and a reason to fight over this objective. But in China, it was just kind of in the beginning, it was really messy. It was just like fight, 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 fight. But over the course of the year, they got more intelligent with the way and why they're fighting these things. Like they don't have to fight over a dragon. They can legit just fight because they know they have pressure in mid lane and they have 10 seconds, 20 seconds where they can, oh, we have a 20-second fighting window where we can just do it if we want to. All right, let's try and do it and see if we get an advantage. If you know that the enemy raptors are up spawning, well, okay, I have my support I can send up. Let's just make raptors an objective we're fighting over then. If you don't want to fight it, that's great. We just get a camp for free. And then that's still a little bit of gold. But if you do want to fight it and we're doing better, it's going to look a bit messy, but they're still coming out with a bigger gold lead and all that. So I think the aggression coming through over there, it's just to a point where they've refined it way more now. And I think sometimes, I think LEC is just too afraid to mimic that playstyle because maybe they don't feel like they have the hands. Maybe it's too uncoordinated. We want to be like able to thought behind the plays we're making. You have to be able to explain why you're making this play. And sometimes if it's just like, well, I just think I'm better than this player, maybe maybe you shouldn't go for the play then if it really doesn't work out. But sometimes it's players like that will shine through, that will be the best of the best. So certainly something like that is part of it. But I also just think that in the end they are just mechanically better players that allows them to have a playstyle like this.
but also I mean when they have had this playstyle for so many years, right? They have like the most like the craziest amount of limit testing, and they know
For
exactly
sure.
what like if they are stronger or not at every point in the game, and no better the champions and what they're against, right? So they have like this inherent knowledge that not a lot of players and like have, which is when am I strong in like to the minute almost, like I am stronger than you here, right? And then like backing it up with mechanics is like, okay, well, if I play this right, you can never get this Raptors because I will always win it. So you have to give it up, right?
sure.
And that's like that's like some of the reasons why these LPL games against like non-LPL teams, like when they win, it's just so dominating, and it's just like on a completely different scale than like it's like getting your head smashed in, right? If you lose to an LPL team. Whereas if you lose to an LCK team, it's more like you starving, like getting starved out, right? So it's like two different ways of getting destroyed, right? But like the other one is just more like really smashing, like.
I think there's two ways to it. I think T1 is the one team that actually doesn't have an LCK playstyle, and they actually have an LPL playstyle where they are way more aggressive with the way they're playing. But I also think even in our region, I think you have teams like G2 and Fnatic that has kind of tried to become those kind of teams too, where they are limit testing and where they are pressuring, because it'll have to come to a point where you can't always just stay in the same thing in the same level and never try to move yourself forward to really know how far you can actually go. If you just continue playing the calculated style, at some point you will make a team that will just completely push you back away. You've never been pushed back, and all of a sudden you won't know what to do. So I think the top end of the teams at the LEC are actually they realize this as well, and they are trying to play a more aggressive playstyle, and they are playing an entertaining playstyle. I think the only reason, once again, I said that I would rather cast LPL rather all the time is because the bottom teams do it too.
Yeah,
And the
exactly.
bottom teams don't do it in LEC. The bottom teams are very like, we're just dying. And I wish the bottom teams as well, because you don't even have to fear getting relegated. We have a franchise, right? So I just wish that sometimes they just threw more emphasis and just like, don't be afraid. Let's try and just limit us. Let's try what's worked out for us and just throw it at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's something that like LCS does not do very much of, if at all, right? So why is it like, why do you think like, because LCS, right, especially TSM, like they are not like really down on, like they're not playing well at all, right? But why is it that they are not trying some of these things that, like with the limit testing, with the aggression, like why is it they are always just satisfied playing the same way for like 8 years running now, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, right? Like why is it like the NA teams aren't trying to adapt to this kind of playstyle?
I think they are still trying to adapt to some extent, but I also think it's because there's so many shuffles all the time. Like I don't think I barely watch LCS, right?
Yeah.
But I think for sure that I genuinely think like that they are getting better. I don't think that they're falling behind. Like I still think that as a region they are improving. I think EG showed that as well. Despite going 0-6 to EG to G2, they still displayed that they could be competitive with a team like RNG if they had just been maybe 5% better in one of their games, right? So I genuinely still feel like the top aspect of the league in LCS is getting better. I think maybe with teams like TSM, it's just because they keep swatching players and I don't really understand their roster movement. So I think that's more a management thing than it is with a lot of other stuff. But in the end, that's not where my expertise really lies. So I don't have too many things to say about it.
No, but I mean, it's just funny because like we've seen LEC become better and better and better, and the European players and teams getting better and better, whereas like the improvement rate for LEC is just way higher than it is in the LCS on an international stage, right? Like you see the best international like tournament or result they've had was like CLG winning MSI, and then it was season 4 Worlds where Cloud9 started in like the semifinals of Worlds after a horrible, like a pretty bad format, right? So like they don't have really much to show for like so many years being in like the competitive environment, right?
I think it's coming. I genuinely think that NA year is not the year where they win it all, right? But I think the year where it changes that. I think the best thing that could ever happen for NA was that EG won it. Genuinely, with two, like they had for the first time in a very long time, majority of that roster was North American and only 2 import slots, right? I think that speaks a lot to the fact that as a fan as well, you have stuff to root for still in North America. But I also think that they got experience because they're so young. You know, we're talking about 18 and 19-year-old players going up and get completely stumped by RNG and T1. That gives you a lot. Like if you can have the right takeaways for that, that sets like the foundation of your improvement too. So I genuinely still feel like the bottom of the LCS is still going to be incredibly trash. But I think there's going to be a very big difference between the bottom and the top. And I'm actually hopeful the fact that NA will start to do better now because of the beatings they've taken.
Yeah.